Welcome to episode 75 of the Mental Dietitian Podcast. I'm your host, Lynch-potter, and today we have a very special guest. She's been my friend, feels like a very, very long time, but it's only been about a month. And she is my friend, B. She's an inventor. She is somebody you want to listen to. She has a crazy, unique story. We're going to talk about a lot of different things today. We're going to talk about boxes and how everybody's trying to put everybody else in a box just to make themselves feel comfortable. We're going to talk about a lot of different things, but welcome to my friend B.
Thanks, Aaron. Lovely to see you again, to be with you again, after all those centuries that we've been together.
Oh my God,
we've traveled something.
Yeah. And people have no context, and I'm just gonna leave it like that.
That's lovely.
Some people will probably figure it out, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
What I usually do when I have conversations with people, I usually hey, tell me about you. Where did your story begin? And then it just kind of turns into a conversation. So tell us about you. Where did you grow up? How did you get here? Obviously, that could be a conversation that could last days, weeks, months, years. Try and wrap it up into like a 5 or 10 minutes. Tell us about you. Where was B born? What did she do in her early life? And how did she end up in Canada?
Oh my God.
But I'm actually, no. I know I'm going to interrupt you on this time because I know that you've done some pretty cool things. And we might just do the entire podcast about that, to be honest, because it's cool. Anyway, the stage is yours.
Okay, so I was born in 1964 in the Netherlands. I never felt home in the Netherlands. We can trace our families back to the same village, to the 1500 or something.
Holy shit.
From both my family sides. Oh. But I never felt home in the Netherlands. I never understood what motivates people. I very young in life, I realized that I'm different, and but never had language for what I felt. Never had language for who I am, how I fit. I saw boys, I saw girls. It's not that. And then in high school, I started falling in love with women. By the way, I knew I fell in love with women when I was 6. And it was never a problem at home, or that was all. My father died when I was 8. And these two things, I'm just slamming in the door with that. The fact that my father died when I was 8, and the fact that I'm a self-acclaimed gender weirdo, no language there. I denounce any kind of language around that, and we'll get into that later. Obviously, you already announced that. Are the two things that I think shaped me in my life, and still make me the person who I am right now. With my father's death, people disappeared. And I realized when I was 8 that people disappear because they are uncomfortable talking about death. And I think I lost a lot of respect for humanity right there, because I realized that people chose their own comfort around not talking about death over showing up for a family that just lost a father.
Oh, wow.
Right?
I want to pause that there, because what you just said is fucking huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people basically choose their own discomfort because of how they feel around death.
Yes.
Versus showing up for an 8-year-old kid that needs some support and needs.
And my mom was only 35. She lost the love of her life. Mm-hmm. And my father was 10 years older than her. And so she had 3 children, 6, 8, and 11, at a 35-year-old woman. And family disappeared for at least 2 years or something. And then they came back, and we couldn't talk about that because that would make them uncomfortable. That is something like leaping back forward. I've invented a walking bike, and I work a lot with people that have some kind of mobility challenges. And all that I learned there with losing my father taught me what I needed to know for doing the company that I have now, because people with disabilities make you uncomfortable because they are the first little indent on our, invincible life. Everything happens to other people, but it won't happen to me. I know that texting and driving will kill you in most cases, but that won't happen to me. So I can just quickly text and drive. All those exceptions that we make, other people get homeless, that won't happen to me. Other people get MS, that won't happen to me. Like all that stuff until shit happens. And then they're like, oh, I survived cancer. Now I value life. It's like, why didn't you value that before? Because we are taught that we're not mortal or something. I don't know. We avoid death. And I think that is one of the main reasons why I didn't understand where I was in the Netherlands. Because nobody wants to talk about death. And death has become the sort of drive in my life. When I was 9, I wrote a poem, and I can't remember the rest of the poem, but the last sentence was, "Your death taught me how to live." Because I heard my father and mother always say, like, once I'm retired, is what my father said, we buy a Land Rover and we go cross country in Africa. And that was the first thought that I had when he died. It's like, oh, they never got to do that.
Yeah, it's called when then syndrome. When I get here, then I'll be happy.
Yes. And I don't think he had that problem because he chose to have a family and children and not do that. That was literally something that he was fine not doing, because you do make choices, but they always had that dream. And as a kid, I had that thought like, they didn't get to do that. And so I started living my life like I should be able to drop dead any moment and not regret anything. So when I was 9, that sentence came out in a poem. Your death taught me how to live. So death became a sort of motivator in my life to live my life to my full capacity, to my full potential, to never leave words unsaid, to live in truth and to live right. And then living in a society where you can't talk about death is sort of deafening. So I always had to dream to leave the Netherlands. Being gender weirdo didn't make me fit either. I didn't have language. I didn't know who I was. And I had to reinvent myself because I realized that there was boys and girls, that there was a very binary system. There was nothing in between. But I didn't understand why I was the weirdo in my own culture. So in 1999, I decided to leave. I mean, I'd been away for half a year to Australia, and I'd lived in France for half a year, and I lived in Sicily for a while in women's peace camps. And like, I've done some stuff. And then I finally left for good the Netherlands at the end of 1998, early 1999. I went to Kenya. And in hindsight, I think I put myself in a situation where I knew I was going to be the exception. And I knew I was going to be the weirdo. If you place yourself as a white person in the slums in Black Kenya, you see it coming, because I did that. But I took charge of my life of being the weirdo because I placed myself there. In the Netherlands, I didn't understand why I was the weirdo. But placing myself in very different cultures, and I lived 10 years overseas, starting in Kenya. And that turned out to be 10 years international work, of which 3.5 years in Afghanistan. And yeah, how's that for the first 5 minutes, Aaron?
Yeah, there's so many things.
There's no linear line there. That's not possible.
Well, something that is always, it's a very interesting question, is that that you're using your terminology, gender weirdo. When did you first feel that?
The first memory of that is when we did a game in primary school, and I was, everybody stands in a circle, boys and girls, and then one person stands in the middle. You have to close your eyes, and then you turn around with your finger pointed out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wie mag ik een kusje geven? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How can I? Who may I kiss? That's kind of, but in Dutch that rhymes. Yeah. So then you, with your eyes closed, if you don't cheat, and of course I was cheating. You turn around, and then wherever you stop, at the end, wie mag ik een kusje geven? And then you stop, and then you point at the person, and you have to go over and you kiss that person. So I looked through my... What?
Can you imagine playing that game these days in the society that we live now? Holy shit.
It's a long time ago. 54 years ago. It was all possible in a tiny little village in the Netherlands. And so I looked through my... how do you call those things? Yes. And because there was one girl with big curly hair, and she was like a bit of a... she was lovely. I really liked her. And so I looked at that. Where I stopped was where I could give her a kiss. And then I came home and I said to my mom, I think I'm in love. And she said, what's his name? And I was like, his name? What do you mean? It's her. And she was like, oh yeah, of course.
Of course.
And from there on, but it was, so in the Netherlands, at home, I didn't get the idea that I was different. But nothing, all the language in school was boys, girls. They were starting dating, and later in high school and whatever. And then I was like, that's not me. I just don't fit in. I did all the boys things, of course. I had a pocket knife that my father gave me. I cut wood. When my mom lost me, she quickly learned that she had to go to the next scaffolding building site because I was hanging out with the carpenters. I was taking bikes apart. I was fixing the washing machine. I was painting the house. Like I did soccer, like all that, all the boy stuff, all the physical boy stuff. I love that. So, and then the girls were playing with the Barbies and shit. I was like, that's really not, like, who are those creatures? I didn't know who they were, but yet I was apparently part of them. And nothing ever worked. And I literally had to reinvent myself. But luckily, I had a father who was an inventor, who had a very strange way of looking at things. For me, not strange, but I learned later that was not quite normal what he did to me, with me, the things that he taught me. And I can give you some examples too. They're fun. So I was lucky that I had parents that gave me, first 8 years before my father died, I had a very solid upbringing with extremely loving parents. And my parents were utterly in love with each other. There was never any upheaval or disrespect, nothing. So I think that with that upbringing in love and being welcomed for whoever the fuck I was, gave me the confidence and the conviction that I can just be who I am.
Mm.
And it's painful to say that sometimes because so many people don't have that.
Yeah, it's like, we talked about when we met, there's a lot of, it's a hot subject right now. It's a very hot subject of like binary, non-binary, all these terms, all these pronouns, all these, I don't know, it's just become really hot. It's something that's talked about in society. And what I find interesting about it is that there's not many people in society, or maybe they just haven't felt safe to express whatever. Mm-hmm. But most of society would, I don't know, this is my opinion, is binary. Most of them are like, I'm a man or a woman, but there's different things within that where some people like planting gardens and growing flowers, and then other people are musicians, and there's all these different energies and versions of feminine and masculine energy. There is. Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
Because we're humans. We all have that.
Exactly. And it's just like, what is your opinion on this? The last few years, and why it's such almost like there's always laws around it. Like in Canada, there's laws that if you don't, I don't know how accurate it is, and I don't know how enforceable it is, but if you address somebody in the wrong pronoun, that it can be a criminal charge. Like, what's your thoughts around that? Obviously, feeling this way from such a young age, not feeling like you fitted into the box.
Mhm.
And why do you think it's happening now?
Well, first of all, I don't have a box because I was not trained to think inside of a box. What I said, my father was an inventor. To give you an example, bedside stories, it's nice. But my father's bedside stories were a little bit different. He said, okay, we live in this house. What if we put this house on its side? And now try and visualize that the kitchen block is now hanging on the ceiling, and that the two bedrooms that were like this are now all of a sudden above each other, and the windows are on the ground. What do we need to do to readjust the whole house, anything in the house, electricity, like anything, to make it livable again? And he said, but we don't stop there. Also look at the opportunities that are there now. For example, the front window is now on the grass outside. And so how nice is it to take the glass out, dig a hole, and have a pond in the middle of the room? And we had a pond in the middle of the room because we created it. That was one of the new opportunities. And we went in detail into everything to make that house livable again, and to make it, and all just in our imagination. He brain trained me.
Wow.
He also had a question when I was 5 years old or something that always stayed with me. And only later in life, I realized the incredible impact of that question and what he then taught me. And especially when I was in Afghanistan and shit happened, that I was like, he trained me to stay sane in this situation, in those situations. And maybe we can go into that later or something. But what he taught me, what he asked me when I was 5 years old or something, he said, what do you do not to go crazy if somebody locks you up for something that you think?
Wow. What do you do to not go crazy if somebody locks you up for something that you think?
That's preparing me to be a political prisoner and not lose my mind. Why would a guy in the Netherlands ask his 5-year-old daughter that question? But later that made all the sense in the world, because I've been in situations where I was interrogated and and I was like, oh, I'm not going crazy. I'm not losing my shit, because my father trained me to stay sane in this situation. And then he taught me how to play chess. Taught me all the openings, taught me how to think ahead, to strategize, and that the possibilities exponentially grow as you take every step forward. He explained that all to me. And then once we played chess, he took away the board. And before he died, we played chess without a board. We just visualized it. And then we would pass each other in the house, and I would say, horse from B2 to C4 or something, whatever.
I've heard about this, that people, it's called, what's it called? That type of chess? It's got a name.
I have no idea. And I stopped playing chess when he died because it was too much linked to him and it was too painful. But that is, so I play chess in my head when I'm in a situation where I need to stay centered. It's a sort of meditation, I guess. You just stay centered. So my father's an inventor. I do not have that box. I understand that people are trained in a box, that they're conditioned to think like, this is the binary world, this is how we grow up, and then people have to break out of it. They have to get out of the box. But I was never trained to be in the box. So I don't have a box. I acknowledge that people live in boxes, but I do not live in a box. So I don't think outside the box. I just don't have a box. And I think that if you're trained to be in the box and you have to break out, you start realizing like, oh, I'm different, I'm not. Then you need the language to identify yourself, to break free from the construct of the binary that this whole society is based on. Plus, I think that the whole Western society, and if you go back a few centuries into indigenous communities, there were many genders. There still are different genders in all indigenous communities. I have lived in many different countries, and I learned that only in the Western societies we have a exclusive binary system. Even in Afghanistan, cross-dressing for women is a cultural phenomenon, and it's accepted. Here we think, in Afghanistan, really? Is that the case? Yes. I have been offered a girl to get married to in Afghanistan, full knowing that I was a woman, full knowing who I was. I got access to meetings where only men ever had access to. I've had full access to women meetings and women gatherings. There is, in indigenous cultures where they're still intact, there is a deep understanding that we as people do not live in a binary construct. That is a Western economic model. So the Western societies have created a binary model because if you create a man, woman, children cornerstone of society, now we can market to you. Now we can train you to be consumers, because that's what a capitalistic system is based on. We live in an economic construct. We don't live in a culture. We live in an economic construct. And if I want to identify myself in reaction to a system that doesn't want me, then I'm still playing with the system.
Yeah, that's what I find is very interesting, is the whole like, oh, I'm not she, her, he, him, I'm they, them, or whatever that is. It's like, that's playing the same game that you're trying to escape from.
Yes. And people need to do what they need to do. Everybody is on their own process, on their own journeys. And I'm not saying like what I do, everybody should do, and it's ridiculous. No. Not at all. Everybody is on their own journeys. For me, I denounce language around it, because any kind of language that I use to qualify, so that they know how to think about me, because that's what it is, right? And and I said that to you when we met. It's like, if people ask me, so how do you identify? Because I'm born as a woman with female genitalia, I should say, and then I still have a vagina. That didn't change. But I got rid of my breast. And after my breast, because they were fucking useless. It's just bad design to have big things on the front of you hanging. They're poking into, and they're always in the way, and they cause back problems. It's a bad design. Me as a designer can't stand it. So they had to go, right? Just a bad design. So after 40 years, I finally found a way to get rid of them. I had a double radical mastectomy, and it was the best thing ever happened to me. But then people say, like, people think that they're so so free thinking. So how do you identify now? And then my standard answer now is like, how can I help? Because clearly you need, a term to identify me. But why is the experience of me gendered? The fact that I'm born with female genitalia or male genitalia or something in between, because there's people that do not have particular female genitalia or they're somewhere in between on that. Like, there's exceptions. We never talk about that, but there's a lot of exceptions in that whole thing. So there is not biologically just men and women. That's a myth. Doesn't exist. There's a lot more happening. But the sexual biological thing, whatever happens with your genitalia when you're born, has nothing to do with my experience of self. My experience of self only must be gendered when we live in a social construct or an economic construct that defines roles for men and women based on their genitalia. And then when I'm a little bit different, when I play football or soccer as a girl, then I'm a tomboy. No, I just like playing soccer or playing with wood. These are roles that we have assigned to genitalia at birth. But my experience of self is not gendered. My experience of me is not defined by the fact that I have a vagina. That's only in the construct out there that my experience of self, my gender experience, needs words. I don't feel that need. I'm just me. And
when I met you, I was like, I'm just B. That's me. I am B. That's who I am. That's my name.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah.
What I am not educated about, or maybe have strong opinions about, is when, and it's very popular. Like, I saw something that I felt a lot of charged emotion. There was a person, her name was Fallon Fox. Fallon Fox used to be a man. She became a woman. She still biologically had like the bone density of a man. She went through puberty, right? And she went into MMA, female MMA, and just beat the fuck out of so many women. It was horrible to watch. And then, like, what are your thoughts? Because that's sex, right? There's sex and there's gender. You said that your experience of self has nothing to do with gender, which I totally get that. But then there's biological differences between a biological male, I think that's the right terminology, and then a biological female. And then especially when it comes to them physically, like there's physical differences, like a man is usually stronger than a woman in that sense. So like, what are your thoughts about like people saying that? I've seen people say that there's no difference between men and women, that we're all the same. And I just don't agree with that in the way. Like, we're not the same, that we are different structures around things. But I think that's more talking about sex, not gender, right?
Physiological things are as diverse as anything. I mean, if there is a, like, you put me with some women are super strong. Okay. Some women are beasts.
Yeah.
Some women are tiny and fragile and will never win a gold medal on anything.
Same with men.
Same with men. There's men that have no muscle memory in their body. Like, it's, again, you're trying to fit somebody who is somewhere on whatever physiological scale into a binary system. We have created exclusively binary sports. And now you're trying to fit in somebody who's not quite on that and that doesn't.
That's why it pisses people off so much, because there's that binary system you're mentioning, and if somebody has obviously they're going to have a clear advantage, usually, especially if it's the same.
No. I don't know. I mean, this is a very complicated subject. For one thing,
conversation. I want to have the conversation because I find it fascinating.
Yeah. But for one thing, Aaron, you said he was born as a man. He wasn't. He had a body that didn't match who he was, who she was, who she is. What he did is adjust his body to his experience of self within the binary construct. He was never a man. Transgender people do not change their gender. They have bodies that don't match who they are, and they adjust their bodies. And I do believe, and I might say some controversial things there, I do believe that the stronger the binary model is being plumped onto you, and the stronger we are forced to be boys here, girls there, and the roles and everything to it, the stronger people want to break free from that, because it's not human. It's not the human experience to be fitted in an economic model. So I think that the trans people have always been there. Two-spirited people have always been there. Gay people have always been there. In indigenous cultures, way before, the colonials came here, that was a very normal thing in every indigenous community, culture. The fact that, in the Second World War, we always talk about the Jews that were killed in the camps. But there were a lot of gay people that, with a pink triangle, they were identified and they were killed. Why? Because gay people upset the binary construct. So they had to be eradicated. When the colonists came to North America, two-spirited people were specifically targeted and eradicated because they upset the binary construct. Why do we have such hate going on to the whole LGBTQ community right now? Because it upsets the binary construct. And the binary construct is the drive of our economic capitalistic system. If you don't fit, we don't know how to market you. We don't know how to make you a consumer of what.
Interesting.
Right?
So you're saying that the total economic system is driven by there's men and women, and that if that fell apart, if that binary system fell apart, or was just, let's say, let's use the analogy of a box, like all the edges fall down, there's no box anymore. That all these companies that market to us wouldn't know how to market to us anymore.
Well, look at how sexualized advertisements are.
It's a very interesting thought to ponder. And here's the thing: I've had conversations with people on here with people that I know would be extremely uncomfortable around you.
And I make people uncomfortable for sure.
They would be uncomfortable with themselves, and it's like,
yeah.
And I can even when you're saying certain things, there's certain parts of me that's like, oh, I don't know if I agree with that, but it's just like that's just my own box, and that's why I did this podcast. Give me a second. I'm just gonna put this down a little bit because I'm getting shot in the face.
The thing is, every time that you get uncomfortable, we have become accustomed to starting to blame others that make me uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, I talk about that all the time. Nobody can make you feel anything. Somebody can do something and then you feel uncomfortable. They didn't make you feel anything. Nobody can make you feel anything. So anytime somebody says, you made me feel uncomfortable, no, you made yourself feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. They didn't do anything. Unless obviously they're screaming in your face saying like, yes, there's like that. But if you're just having a conversation like we are, mm-hmm. and then somebody's highly uncomfortable, that is their problem. And it's always an invitation. And I talk about this all the time. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. As soon as I met you, I was like, she's my friend. I don't give a fuck if she's a she or what. She's B. She's my friend. And like, I remember we were swimming in the pool. I remember looking at you and you had this tattoo. And then I saw these big 2 scars and I felt uncomfortable. Nothing to do with you. I felt uncomfortable. I was like, why is that? It's because I was like, again, I was searching. I was like, I wonder where she fits in this box. Like, where's B's box? And you're like, I don't have a box, motherfucker. I'm like, but where's the box that I can fit you in?
So you know how to think about me.
Exactly. And that's why it's like, it's such an interesting conversation because people need to listen to this conversation.
So when you get uncomfortable, or when I get uncomfortable, I'm always curious, like, why am I uncomfortable, and
what's going on here? But most people,
what is upset here? Because if I get uncomfortable, I get pushed on an edge. What is the edge? And I love running edges and being on edges. If I'm not on an edge, I'm uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable.
Because I love being on an edge because it forces you to think about stuff and it forces you to grow and to learn and to evolve. if I can't grow or evolve, i.e., if I'm comfortable in a state of comfort, I feel that I'm dead, which the state of comfort is death.
Love it.
Yet people look for comfort, but they can't talk about death. But actually, they're alive and dead at the same time.
Yeah, it's wild.
We have created a very strange society.
I'm reading this book. You probably heard it. A lot of people have heard it, called The Untethered Soul. And it talks, this is one chapter where it talks about death. And it said that death is life's landlord. And that anytime somebody has a near-death experience, they has that saying called, oh, he or she, or they're on borrowed time. Borrowed from what? Death. The only reason why life is precious is because death is there. Death is the great equalizer. It is the great perspective giver.
Mm-hmm.
And lately, I didn't think about my death for a long time. I would kind of avoid it. I'm like, oh, that's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I read this book. It's just like, if you had a week left to live, what would you be doing? And I was like, well, I would probably create something like what I'm doing right now. We are creating right now. We're creating a conversation. I was like, I would create a course or some kind of something, create something. And then it's just like, the next question is like, so why are you not doing that now?
Yeah, oops.
I was like, well, fuck me. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm doing. Hey, listeners, I'm creating a course and I don't know when it's going to come out, but you will know. And it's going to be fucking awesome. It's going to be my life's work accumulated. And the first course I'm going to create is called some version of this, Becoming Unstuck, Befriending Discomfort. How to get unstuck, befriending discomfort. And going back to the conversation we're having, it's just like I'm listening to you and I'm like, that I've never had that thought that our economic system, obviously there's other factors. It's not like when we talk about this, it's not like we are the all-knowing gods of the universe. Like, oh, this is exactly how it is. We're not saying that. It's interesting to talk about these things, because I've never had the thought that our economic system is a binary system, that if you advertise to men and women, there's men's shoes, there's women's shoes, there's this, there's that. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a very interesting thought, because if none of that terminology existed, how would the world work?
How do you make people consumers when you don't have a customer model?
I have my own theory about why that exists, is that I've had my own theory about that. I call it not enough-itis, like the great spiritual pandemic, the great psychological pandemic on the world, that all marketing and all advertising is solely based on telling a human being that what they are by default is not enough. And therefore,
scarcity and fear.
Scarcity and fear.
That are the tools of this system, right? Yeah. So you need to buy all this stuff, but that's the same consumer mindset. You need to buy all this stuff to become somebody.
Yeah. Then you're enough. If you have this car, then you're enough. If you have this nice house in North Vancouver, then you're enough.
Regardless whether you're miserable as hell and have to drink away a lot of shit in the evening to feel not so bad, we don't care. You look from the outside, you've got the Maserati out the door, and you're, you got your little puppet girl that looks like a fucking Barbie, or like all that shit that you see in advertisements. It changes a little bit. Some companies try to get the,
my favorite thing,
the gay couple in there or something, because now they can market to the gay couple.
Oh, that's wild. Like during Pride Month, it's like they try so fucking hard. All the Instagram pictures have got the rainbow flag, and they've got all this stuff.
Pimping.
And I'm like, they're just trying to take your money.
It's just pimping it all out. I don't go to Pride anymore. I mean, I used to go to Pink Saturdays in Amsterdam or whatever, because they were sort of political protests, right? It was like, yeah, fuck, we're here. But once it became the gay pride, and you could, have a fleet with the RBC fucking bank doing a float with a rainbow on, it's like, I'm not for sale. Fuck all this. I'm sorry. I don't know if your
I
podcast
swear all the time.
Okay, good.
Like,
But I thought so. But it's completely pimped out, and it's got nothing to do with gay people anymore. It's just like, how can we bank on this a little bit harder? And I'm not part of that, so I'm not going to that.
That's what. Like, even like there's Black History Month, right? Same thing. Like, Nike makes Black History Month shoes, especially for that month. And it's just like, oh, we're honoring it. It's like, I get it. I do get it. And it's like celebrating, and there's clothes, and I get it. But then there's also a part of it that could be very dark in a way.
Well, it's dark because it's talking about history only, and it's happening right now. It's not history. I mean, there's a part of history, but it's living history. It's happening right now.
There's a black dude right there. Like,
George Floyd was the last black guy that was killed. Let's put it that way. It still fucking happens.
Oh, man.
And now we don't talk about it because, oh well, oops. We had the little black thingy now, and now everybody got in the drama. But this is what happens with all that ad hoc drama, trauma response thing. Aaron, that's all trauma response. You know that, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
Whenever I see drama,
the Black History Month Foundation, right, that raised $100 million or something, and then all of a sudden they found out the person that was running it gave all this money to a family and bought houses and shit with it, and it's just like, that's sad. And it's just like, it's trauma. It's like the world collectively has all this stuff. And it's just like, if you could just, it's like how I see you. I don't see you. I'm learning. I'm learning that even the conversations like this, I'm learning. I don't see you as a man or a woman. I don't see that. I just see you're my friend. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't. And if we get to that place where it's like, oh, this is my friend. Oh, the black dude. No, it's just my friend that just happens to be of African descent. It's like, and we do it all the time. Oh, the black guy. It's like, what about the guy? I do it sometimes to differentiate somebody from a group. Like, oh, that guy over there. And my buddy's like, oh, the black guy or the Asian guy.
But this all goes back to what we have: skin color, gender identifications, disabilities or abilities. That's what we have. In the Alinker, and we have been taught that what we have is who we are, but that's not true. I can choose to be a kind person, whether I'm black or yellow or white, woman or man. I can choose to be a kind person. And then my actions as a kind person and being congruent in everything, and it's not easy to truly be kind in this world. No. I'm not talking about Canadian niceness. I'm not talking about that.
No, that is not
deeply kind, right? Yeah. And kindness is understanding what you buy. If you buy a piece of meat, for example, understanding that the whole industry behind that is not kind, not for the environment, not for the animals, and not for the shit that we put in our body when we eat that meat. It's not kind. Once you really feel that, you can't eat meat anymore.
Yeah, or you get like, you know, exactly. All right, I'm back. Or like me, I'm a big meat eater, but I only eat meat where I know. I study where I get my meat from, and I'm actually in the next probably few months or years, I want to go get my own meat. I want to be at the very start of the process, whether it's a deer or a moose or an elk. I believe that if you cannot kill that animal yourself, you have no business eating it. If you are so disconnected spiritually from the process of understanding what you're doing when you're killing an animal and what you're doing, and if you can't do that, I don't think you have any business eating meat. And if you can't kill that animal, I don't think you should eat the animal. That's my mindset behind it. And I wrestle with that. I've wrestled with going vegan and doing all that kind of stuff. Me personally, I've tried it. there's something in me that really craves meat. It happens, maybe it's the way I eat, lifting weights, martial arts that I do, but I have no problem with people that don't eat meat. Totally get it. And all the different ways that people go about it. And it's very interesting. But yeah, I agree with
But
you.
I was more saying, like,
it's brutal. The meat industry, I've worked in it.
It's disgusting.
It's fucked up.
It is criminal. It is disgusting. And I don't know if you know that, but 80% of the antibiotics in the world is produced to give to animals because we overcrowd them and treat them so badly that we give 80% of antibiotics in the world to animals not to get them sick, and they get sick anyway. But
well,
anyway,
for you guys I was about 18, 19. I came back from going to a holiday in Thailand for 6 weeks, and I didn't have a job. And my buddy got me a job at, what was it, Fletcher's Abattoir. Ooh. They killed between 3,000 and 5,000 sheep a day. It was a conveyor belt. Most of the time I worked in the freezers, which wasn't that bad. It was like -30. The boxes would come down with the meat on a conveyor belt, and we'd load them into a freezer. It would make sure the boxes were lined up with a really big pole, and you could only spend about 30 minutes in there. Then you get subbed out and you'd go outside where you'd load the boxes onto the pallets, and then they'd ship off to wherever. So one day, though, they were short-staffed on the other side. And I'd never been to that side. And I only worked there for one day. And that day was traumatizing to me. And I can't really eat sheep. Sometimes when, it doesn't happen anymore, but it used to happen with store-bought steak. The smell of the steak was like a trauma response. It was like fucking horrific. But my job was the kidneys, I can't even remember if it was the kidneys or the liver, but they would come by and they have a membrane on them. And I had this piece of air, like this tube, and I stuck the kidney on this tube and it would inflate the membrane. I would take the membrane off and put the kidneys in a box and the membrane in the trash, basically. And I remember seeing this man. He was Muslim because they had to kill it the halal way, right? Because I had to ship it. A lot of it was to Saudi Arabia, like all that kind of stuff. Most of the meat from Australia at the time, especially that particular place, went to Muslim countries. And just seeing him, he would be cutting the throats of these sheep, thousands of them a day. And then every 100 so sheep, he'd stop the conveyor belt because his knife's getting blunt. I remember this one time, he didn't kill a sheep properly, and it was thrashing around. And I saw it get to a machine, and this is going to be hard to listen to, but I'm not going to describe too much. There was a machine that basically took the skin and the wool off the sheep, and then it was just left with the carcass, right? This sheep hit that machine while it was still alive. I'll never forget that.
Good.
I'll never forget that. But the thing that grossed me out the most was all the cancerous growths. I can't remember, like I said, if it was the kidneys or the livers. Might have been the kidneys. They were different shapes. Some of them were green. Some of them had pus in them. I remember looking at this and I just had this massive perspective shift of like, this meat is sick. Like this, I remember this one, like most of the kidneys were like the size of my fist. There was one that was like the size of two of my fists, and it was like rock hard. And I was like, what is wrong with this sheep? And we're eating that. And I was like, this is weird. And ever since then, like all the fish I eat is usually wild caught. We go on a fishing trip and I catch it myself and I kill it myself. And it's wild caught salmon from the fucking ocean or halibut.
And what is in the ocean?
Yeah,
and how many heavy metals does it accumulate that you can't get out?
Yeah.
And I agree with you that if you can't kill an animal, you shouldn't eat it. But the fact is that we live in a world where nothing is in balance anymore with nature and da-da-da-da-da. And it does take 75% more resources to create a kilo of meat versus a kilo of vegetables.
Yeah.
And in this time of environmental stuff, it's just a no-brainer. Like, besides the whole abuse of the meat industry, which is completely like I think 50 years from now, if we have the time of life, we look back and we are ashamed of ourselves beyond any measure, because this what we're doing with alive creatures. We are all those creatures. We are all one. And if we make a difference, but this also happens in the binary system, you make everything other. This is the good, this is the mainstream, anything else is less. Now we can give it a title, we can dehumanize it and just treat it as a commodity.
Like
Animals
I say sometimes,
are not a commodity.
I just want to go out in nature today. You heard people say that?
Yeah.
Like you that's you, dude. That's you. Your nature.
Yeah, we are nature.
We are nature. And yeah, it's interesting. It's like,
and about needing meat, I think is a lot of that is conditioned, because the biggest animals on the planet are all plant eaters, and they have muscles. The big gorillas, they're very related to us. They're like 99%
gone down I know what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
It's a conditioned thing. And as a big man, I need my protein. Like I eat only plants. I've been a vegetarian my whole life. I was luckily raised without meat. And my grandma was so wise to not link the lack of money, so we couldn't eat meat, to eating meat. We didn't have the money to eat meat because that was too expensive. But she always said, and as my father died, my mom flipped out and my grandma looked a lot after us. She always said, like, if we don't need to kill the animal to survive, why would we kill the animal? And I've never forgot that. And so by the time I got money to eat meat, I wasn't triggered in the scarcity thing, like, oh, now I have money, now I can eat meat. Because what she had done has instilled a value in me instead of linking it to scarcity. And I didn't start eating meat just because now I had money.
Have you ever tried meat?
Oh, I lived in Argentina, and of course you have to try meat there. I was invited to in Riyadh to the Prince of Saudi Arabia, the brother of the current king, the asshole. He is not an asshole. He was the first Muslim who went up into space. Actually, he was the first astronaut, and he invited me to his palace in Riyadh to have camel with him. We have to try camel. You cannot say no to the prince and not eat camel. So of course I ate camel, but it was very chewy and very I couldn't do it. And the little meat that I ate in Argentina gave my intestines a cramp like nothing else.
Yeah, not used to that.
You're not used to that at all. And your body is actually not good with it. My body is not good with it because it's not used to it. I had a chicken in Kenya, my very first chicken, because I was in the school for the deaf. And one of the teachers who had slightly Alzheimer's, I think, at that time, she invited me, like, do you want to go for lunch tomorrow with me? It's like, yeah, sure. And so at 7:00 in the morning, she said, let's start walking. You know, okay. And she stayed in the school, and I did not realize what was going on, obviously. So we started walking, and after an hour, I said, so where's your house? I need to go to the school. And she was like, oh, no, just there. So we kept doing that, and it was 40 degrees, and it was very humid, and la la la. And finally we arrived to her hut, and she plants me in her hut, gives me a cup of water, and continues on. End of the story is, of course, that after another hour or something, she comes back. She had continued onto the market, got a fucking chicken, and came back with the chicken, and then started plucking the chicken and preparing the chicken. Of course, you cannot say no to that.
No.
That was the first chicken in my life. And I had to stay the night there because, because you don't walk in the night when it's dark in Kenya, and 6:30 or something comes dark. So you don't walk back. So the next day we walked the whole day back. That was my first chicken. In Afghanistan, I've eaten chicken because as a vegetarian in Afghanistan, there is an option between white bread and white rice, or white bread or white rice. And then sometimes some cauliflower, but they put that 3 hours in the pressure cooker and melt some animal fat to put that on top of yourself. And you got some grease, animal grease against your against your palate. And sometimes it was like, oh, I need something else. And they had okra, but they cooked that so long that it was just snot, and I cannot do that. And so I did have chicken sometimes in Afghanistan. So
Are you vegan or vegetarian?
I have always been vegetarian, except for those incidents,
you have
kind of thing.
Cheese and eggs and things like that.
Yeah, and since last year, April, I'm completely plant-based only. No processed food, no nothing but plants.
Wow.
And the thing is that my protein levels have increased since I take out the protein stuff. Because there's a lot of myths in our whole world of food, because food is also marketed, right? Totally marketed.
Yeah, we could go down rabbit holes on this fucking all day. It's marketed.
Yeah.
It's.
But the thing is, with in vegetables, you have amino acids, and if you get a variety of amino acids, your body starts making the proteins that it needs. You don't need to take proteins. Your body creates the proteins from the variety of amino acids that you take in.
Mm.
And there's a lot more stuff that I learned with the Eat Real to Heal program from Nicolette Richer, who we're partnering with the Alinker, and changed my life. I always thought, and the family said, like, oh yeah, high blood pressure is just something that runs in the family. No, it isn't. And some things are genetical. No, they're not. You can turn them on or off.
Yeah.
You don't need to get cancer just because it runs in the family. You can turn that on or you can turn it off. And so, yeah, and maybe we should do a second podcast on that, all that stuff.
Here's my opinion on it. I see people, there's this guy that I follow called Paul Saladino, and he is obsessed with eating organs and red meat. And he says it's bioavailable. He's got study after study that says that we can't break down certain plant toxins, and plant toxins taste bitter. Plants taste bitter because they don't want us to eat them, and all this kind of stuff. And then there's people that are vegans that are basically demonizing people that eat meat. Here's the thing. Here's my opinion on it. And I saw Zach Bush. I don't know if you know who Zach Bush is. He's a doctor.
Yes, I do know him. Yeah.
He's like, listen, like, whatever you find that works for your body, that you feel optimal health, perfect. But so many people they're just projection machines. This Paul Saladino guy, cool. He found many benefits, and a lot of people follow him, and a lot of people have switched to that kind of more carnivore kind of diet. He basically eats meat and fruit. Doesn't really eat vegetables. He doesn't like vegetables. He has a little study and all this stuff against vegetables, whatever.
You know what the common denominator is between plant-based people, not vegan, because vegan has still a lot of processed food, but plant-based, right? The common denominator is that they kicked out all the processed food.
Exactly. They're not.
And that is healthier than anything else. It has nothing to do with vegetables or with meat. It means you eradicate all the crap, toxic shit that we get. And of course, that's healthier.
Yeah.
It's not because of the meat. It's because you don't eat the processed stuff.
Yeah. My opinion on it is whatever you find works for you, great. But also understand that every person's body is different. Some people have been so terribly sick with autoimmune disease and switch to a 100% red meat diet and all their symptoms go away. Other people do exactly the same thing with a vegan diet and all their symptoms go away. Everybody's body is different.
Because they eradicate the processed stuff. That's the crux.
Yes and no.
But on meat, Aaron, on meat, the thing is, meat takes a lot more resources to become a kilo of meat.
Yes.
And in this time of age where any kind of meat is more resources, more nutrients, plants, and whatever, water, before you have that, chunk of meat.
So I think it's 100,000 liters, or it's like 1,000 liters of water or something like that to produce 1 kilogram of beef.
It's 4,000 liters of water per day on all the plants and all the resources that are necessary to feed into that 1 kilo of meat. It's 4,000 liters of water per day.
Crazy, eh?
My kale doesn't get that. I'm just saying. But that's, what you need to do is what works for you. At the end, it's what my grandma told me. You look in the mirror, as long as you're aware, I can choose to eat salmon tonight. It's like, one time I'm fine with that, but I choose. It's not an unaware process of la 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 la. My grandma said every night when I brush my teeth, I look in the mirror and say, I really like you. I want to go to bed with you. And if you've done something or not done something that is not quite okay, because it's not the kind thing to do and you know it, ignorance is shameful because we have all the information that we need to know what the kind things are. And in awareness, that's what I always said. People say, oh, you just need to be aware of something. It's like, well, you got to be careful because once you're aware, you have a choice. Now you make a choice. And now in the awareness, I can choose the kind thing or the unkind thing. At the end of the day, it only matters if I can look in the mirror, it's like, I love you. I want to go to bed with you. I only answer to myself and my values, the ones that I chose. But ignorance, it's kind of criminal in this time.
Yeah, if you're ignorant and it's 2023, I mean, here's the thing, though.
It's a choice to be ignorant, right? And that's criminal.
Choice, but there's also another factor that comes into play is that we could go on for hours and hours. I don't even know if I want to open this can of worms. Basically, like during COVID, we saw the power of algorithms. Like some people, like the whole vaccinated, unvaccinated thing, all that kind of stuff. It's basically there's us and then there's the other. And it's been happening for thousands of years. There's the people who are saved because we believe in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And there's the unsaved.
Oh, let's not say thousands of years. That's hundreds of years, actually, that whole capitalistic them and us. The New Testament started with us and them, started to divide because now it's us and them. There was the New Testament, not a... Well, I'm just saying, like, don't say that that's thousands of years. It wasn't.
Really?
No, it started with the New Testament, us and them.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like what I was...
People have not lived in us and them.
Like the algorithms on our phone, right? Like people would be looking at their phone and be like, how can these people do what they do with all this stuff all this evidence I have? And then the other people on the other side are like, how can these people do all this stuff with all the evidence that I have? Because their algorithms are catering to them. So going back to ignorance, I think that conversations like this is what gets rid of ignorance. Like conversations where we talk about this stuff and like, I don't understand stuff and you think certain things, you have very strong opinions about eating plants and vegetables and I like eating meat, but you're still my friend. And there's not enough of that in the world. People are like, oh, well, he's not like me. They're not like me. Therefore, I can't be friends with them.
But the difference is you're mindful about meat. You had a very clear idea about what kind of meat you eat. For me, it's all about mindfulness.
Yeah.
That you're congruent with yourself, with who you want to be.
Yeah. And
it gets a little bit darker when you decide to be an asshole and do whatever the fuck you want over the back of other people. That's a whole different thing. Those people are there too, obviously. But, like your answer was mindful about meat.
Yeah, because I've really dived into it because I've had to, because I love animals and I see those things. It's like, like I have cats and I've met pigs and I've had a pig look at me in a certain way and I eat bacon. But I also understand that when I'm looking at that pig, that intelligent animal, that I am eating that. And if you can't deal with the responsibility and the heaviness of that and understand what you're doing, don't fucking eat it. And I understand what I'm doing. And there's some part of it that's like, oh, well, do you need to do that? It's like, there's a part of me that's like, this is the path I've chose. Like, it agrees with me. I've tried eating that. I didn't feel like I had any energy. I've tried that. I've been there and I have nothing against it. When I eat meat, I feel vibrant. I feel powerful. I feel strong. I feel good. And that's just my choice. But I also look at these animals like they're beautiful, sensitive, emotional animals. They are. So,
and the difference between a cat and a pig is just the perception.
Well, a pig is full of delicious bacon, and a cat is not.
Yeah, and bacon is only 4% of a whole pig, and they throw the rest out.
I know. I saw that as a meme once. It was like, what's the difference between this puppy and a and a pig? And somebody wrote on the billboard. It was a billboard like the pig is full of delicious bacon, and I was just like, oh my god, man! Like, but yeah, jokes aside, it's like there's suffering and there's things happening. It's like, well, that's why you have to choose. Like, if you are so disconnected from the process that I don't even have conversations with people about it, like, oh, I couldn't kill an animal. I just like it perfectly packaged on the shelf at Save-On.
But the thing in this culture, like I've got a friend from well, I don't know her anymore, but we were in a entrepreneur
Group.
what do you call that, grow cycle or something at UBC. So, and she has blue sky pigs or something. She cuddles them and she da da da. You know how they have to be slaughtered? There is no ethical slaughterhouse for pigs. She has the most amazing animals. They're running free. They're digging into shit. She's cuddling them. It's fantastic. All really fantastic. They have to be slaughtered in a slaughterhouse where they are fearing for their lives, literally, and are tortured because there is no way you can slaughter pigs in a different way. You cannot hand kill pork. That's just prohibited in Canada.
You're not allowed to because of the.
She's not allowed to. No, and there's no slaughterhouse that is a little bit less disgusting than where she has to give her pigs to.
Interesting.
And she was pained by the whole thing. She said, well, at least they only have one bad day in their life. But the whole principle that there is no proper way, proper between brackets, whatever, but the sort of the ethical way that you talk about, it's still slaughter. And the slaughterhouses are not fun.
No, I work.
And so, yeah, you can be mindful about that. And just go and look up Blue Sky.
Blue Sky Pigs.
Yeah, Blue Sky. She's in where's that, in Mission or something, somewhere in that area. I think it's Blue Sky Pigs, Blue Sky something. But the slaughterhouses in Canada, there's certain rules. You can't even get chickens anymore that are not genetically original chickens. It's impossible to get chicks that are not fucked with. Can't get them.
That's what's scary, and it's just like
we have created such, like, the same with anything on agriculture. It's with all the mass production ways, we are so far away from what our bodies understand food is.
Even vegetables and fruit. You look at some of the shit that is like, that's not that. That's not a tomato. Looks like one, but it's not really one. Yeah, it's very interesting, and you have to explore these things. You can't just. I think the general principle is here: don't blindly live your life without examining your life. An unexamined life. You have to examine your life. You have to look at these things. Look what behind, like, why do you believe what you believe? Where does your belief system comes from? Why do you have to have?
And does it make you happy? Does it make you happy? Like at the moment, Aaron, we have 60% of people in North America that have at least one diagnosed chronic illness. 60% of us. That is food industry creating that. 100%. 60% of us. Mindlessness, just shoving the shit that's on the shelves in supermarkets in our faces. And then we have been taught that we have the right to do whatever we want because we are a free country. And then we go to a sick care system to like, I want a cure. Yeah, but maybe you should eat something. Oh, you're telling me what to eat. I have the right to. It's a completely sick society that we have created where people have no responsibility anymore. Freedom cannot exist without responsibility for each other. We're completely lost. And back to that whole mental health issue, I always talk about a spiritual drought that we live in. And there's all this talk about Sinead O'Connor, Shahada, who just passed. like she had mental health issues. Like she didn't. She spoke her truth. She could sleep in peace. What we do have is a spiritual drought, a system under which people suffer. And if you do not have a mental health issue in this world, there's something wrong with you because you're a psychopath or a sociopath or something.
I really like us.
Well, I have mental health issues. I refuse to talk about that though, because then you're stigmatized in the mental health thing, and it's all of a sudden it's your problem or you need medication or something. It's bullshit. We all have mental health issues. We all are traumatized in systems that are not made for our wellness. And so, yeah, we live in a spiritual drought. And of course, we have mental health issues. It's scary if you don't.
We've severed our connection to spirit.
Yeah, and separated ourselves from nature and all the rest of it.
Yeah, going out in nature, it's just like the whole language around it, everything, it's just like... That's why the movie, like the first Avatar movie, was so powerful, because it tells a story that is us.
I wept through Avatar because it's Afghanistan all over. The unobtainium is the uranium in Afghanistan, and it's disgusting.
Or like the...
I wept.
Or like the cobalt in the Congo.
Yeah, same thing.
That goes all into all our phones, into our electric vehicles. People think they're buying a Tesla because they're saving the environment. It's actually more harmful for the environment than a gas-powered car right now. Hopefully that changes, but right now, the amount of energy and resources it goes and how many people die, and how much sickness it causes to mine cobalt. And what's the other one? There's cobalt and there's another one that goes
lithium.
Lithium, that's right, lithium. That just fucks the environment. And it just, there's literally slave labor working on that. And
it's worse than slave labor.
Yeah, it's
slave labor in overdrive. You see the cobalt mine in the Congo. It is, and there's so many of those places, like all the sweatshop where they make our clothing in Bangladesh, and like we've created a horrible world where we can only justify what we do because we other people.
What's the solution? What do we need to do?
It's not the question what we need to do. It's who we decide to be. And I cannot change the world. That would be really arrogant to think that I want it, because that's imposing whatever I think on the rest of the world.
It's basically everybody needs to eat meat, then you'll all be saved. It's like, no, come on, chill out.
But the thing is, if I truly live in congruence with my decision to be a kind person, I create a community around me because it becomes attractive, because you become a bit of a sanctuary for people to find refuge where everything else breaks down and doesn't support them. We have people now, we work with people with disabilities, of course, right? With the Alinker. We have people calling me now and apologizing for not having a physical disability, but if they can please still be part of my community. Because isolation, Aaron, is a way bigger problem than the physical shit that we deal with. That is the society that we have created. We discard people. We have discarded people, everybody who is not like the mainstream. Like all the people, if you want to talk about, the gay people, the women, the color, the yellow, the blue, the purple, the like whatever, all the minorities that we have, all the underrepresented people is a vast majority of diverse people. And the mainstream that benefits is less than 20% of our whole society. Why are we still tailoring to a mainstream that is a minority? Because we continue to put ourselves in little minorities and trying to fight for our little rights as a gay person, as a white person, as a yellow person, as a black person, as a whatever. We should stop identifying with being minorities. We are a vast majority of diverse people that just want to live a happy life. We need to change the narrative and change who we are, decolonize ourselves from all that shit that we've learned and be different. That is attractive, and that creates a magnet. And then you and I can meet, and you are a very unlikely person for me to want to hug and kiss and, whatever. And what did we do? The second day, we were kissing and hugging and all the rest of it, because we meet on different things. We meet on who we decide to be, on the work that we are willing to do to decolonize ourselves from the crap that we've been taught. You were willing to do the work, to stand up for me. I can only love you because you were willing to do the work. That's what matters. It's not what we do. And all that drama, we need to do this and that for the environment. No, there's no climate crisis. We are in crisis. So we need to change. If we care about ourselves, but we haven't learned to care about ourselves. So we need to learn to care about ourselves as part of nature, and then be different.
I think that's the perfect way to wrap up episode 1 of B&R in 10 episodes. I hope you enjoyed this podcast today, you guys listening. I hope you made it to this point. Got 2 very different people that love and care about each other. And go back and listen to what B just said, because what she just said was so powerful, so good. And I really want to thank you for being my friend and saying what you said. And I look forward to wherever our relationship goes and all the conversations we're going to have.
Absolutely. Me too, Aaron. Yeah, amazing.
Thanks, guys. It was good seeing you, listening to you, whatever you're doing. I don't even know. I'm done talking. I've had a big day. Love you guys. We'll see you next week.